Hello everyone, here we are. It's December already, which means it's time to update you on what else I saw in November that I didn't already talk about. I'm here in a different location because someone in the house has had the stomach bug and I'm trying to avoid it. Plus, I prefer to film when there's no one around who might overhear me. This is not an ideal location. I've been trying to film this video for an hour now, and the lighting is very variable, and it's driving me crazy, and I'm almost at the end of my tether, but I just want to get this done because this morning I wasn't feeling 100% myself. So I want to get this done just in case I do come down with something as well. So, I apologize for this not looking very good. But fortunately, I'm not going to be on camera very much anyway. This is a primarily voiceover video. So, let's get to it. Movie number 1 is a viewer recommendation from 1961, Night Tide, written and directed by avant-garde filmmaker Curtis Harrington. Dennis Hopper plays a sailor who encounters a woman, Linda Lawson, and begins to fall for her, even as he wonders if she might be a mermaid. That plot may give you pause, but for this mysterious, atmospheric film, it works. There's a dreamy quality that pervades beyond the nightmare sequences themselves. Yet, despite its fantastical subject matter, the film has a neo-realistic flavor, thanks in part to Dennis Hopper's natural performance. It's almost shocking how young he seems here, and he makes for an appealingly naive protagonist, even if it is strange to see him playing such a nice, sweet-tempered kid. It's also a beat film, with a flute-heavy score by David Raskin, an impromptu dance to the bongos scene, and a coffee shop sequence where people wearing sunglasses indoors at night sit around smoking and listening to jazz. That's not really something I'm into. I began to suspect partway through that I wasn't going to get all my questions answered, and I was right, in a way, but in this instance it didn't matter so much, because this experience is largely one of style over substance. Movie number 2 is also from 1961, The Secret Partner, an unusual British thriller directed by Basil Dearden, which involves blackmail, an alcoholic dentist, a masked figure with an eerie disguised voice, a heist, and a convoluted investigation. It stars Stuart Granger as the one being blackmailed, Haya Hararit in her follow-up to Ben-Hur as his estranged wife, and Bernard Lee as the policeman trying to sort everything out. I won't deny that I had a little trouble keeping the whole thing straight by the end, and then I didn't jot down any notes on the movie until 3 weeks after I'd watched it, by which point I'd forgotten a lot of details, so it's no wonder the whole thing's a little fuzzy to me. Unfortunately, what I do remember clearly, I can't mention here because that would be giving away plot twists. But I can say the movie has some twists and some good imagery. It's a crime thriller, not a horror movie, but the masked man is creepy, and the main reason why I picked this. Bernard Lee's overworked, chain-smoking policeman on the verge of retirement is a likable guy, and the tense dental appointment scene is memorable. Aren't they always? Number 3 is a war movie, 1944's Wing and a Prayer, the story of Carrier X. In the lead-up to the Battle of Midway, a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Pacific is ordered to act as a decoy, but given strict instructions not to attack or fire back at enemy planes, which goes against every flyer's instinct. Don Ameche stars as the second-in-command on board, a stern officer who, of course, has perfectly good reasons for being unfriendly. Dana Andrews plays the torpedo squadron leader caught between sympathizing with his men and needing to reprimand them for disobeying orders. Yes, this is yet another movie where he's a pilot. That makes 5 that I can think of. This was directed by Henry Hathaway, who's known primarily for westerns, and I enjoyed it. It has some funny parts, familiar character actors, a few interesting personalities. A couple sequences stood out. One dramatically switches point of view mid-dogfight from the pilots to those back on the carrier listening in via the radio, and another uses rear projection to make actors appear to be in the midst of heated battle. Not every shot is convincing, but it produces some clever angles and gives it more of an action movie feel. I thought this one was pretty good, and it turned out to be just the thing to watch on Veterans Day. Well, here comes the sun on that side. Speaking of movies about veterans, number 4 is 1983's Uncommon Valor, in which Gene Hackman plays a colonel whose son was listed MIA in Vietnam. After years of waiting and fruitless searching, he decides to take matters into his own hands, assembling a group to break into a suspected prison camp in Laos. Generally speaking, this was a decent film. The story is compelling, and it has a few powerful moments, particularly near the end. There are some genuinely likable characters, and Hackman gives a strong performance. If you're looking for a lesser-known 80s action movie about an impossible mission undertaken by a motley crew, including Fred Ward and Patrick Swayze, this could fit the bill. There are some weird elements, like occasional awkward overdubbing, and aside from a few big explosions, it has a lower budget feel. There were also some bits that were almost overbearingly cheesy, macho men showing off, goading each other into a fight, that kind of thing, which I find tedious. But overall, I liked the movie. Oh dear. Well, the sun came out! Movie number 5 is something I found on Prime, 2003's The Hunted. Tommy Lee Jones plays a grizzled tracker brought to Portland, Oregon by the bungling FBI to find Benicio del Toro's military assassin turned serial killer. But there's more to this manhunt than meets the eye. The leads are solid. Del Toro makes his character both creepy and compelling, and Jones, who's in his 50s here, is in great shape. It's a physically demanding role for both of them, with a heavy emphasis on knife fights. Oof, a little too much slashing for my taste. But what really caught my attention was how Jones played his character in the quiet moments, like when he's awkwardly standing in an office giving short but not unfriendly answers to questions he wants to evade. It's relatively simple, but every aspect, his delivery, his posture, his body language, said something about his personality. The film was directed by William Friedkin, and it's a good example of efficient storytelling. Exposition is minimal, dialogue is direct. The movie doesn't waste time telling you things, it gets to the point and shows you what you need to see so it can maintain focus on the cat and mouse game. The downside is that to keep the movie going, shh, be quiet, so noisy out here. The downside is that to keep the movie going, a character must have an uncanny ability to anticipate his opponent's next 3 to 5 moves. I get that that's kind of the point of the whole thing, and I'll allow that he's smart enough to predict certain actions and fast enough to get to the right place in time. But there are a few instances here where it borders on the absurd. You wouldn't just have to be a mind reader, you'd have to be able to predict the future. Still a pretty good movie, though. And movie number 6, thank goodness we're on the last one, is a viewer recommendation, 1948's Corridor of Mirrors, in which a woman, played by Adana Romney, is swept up in an affair with a man, played by Eric Portman, who lures her into his obsession with the past. This is an odd, atmospheric film, a romantic mystery with a number of psychological undercurrents. For me, the biggest question was how exactly certain characters felt about other characters and what it was they wanted from them. I'm sure this wouldn't have been as ambiguous had the movie been made at a later time. I think I was supposed to find Eric Portman more enthralling than I did. I spent a good deal of time wondering just what response the movie intended to elicit, because this guy with his old-fashioned clothes and masterful presence, who's supposed to be intriguing and almost unbearably attractive, just creeped me out. Maybe things would have been different if he'd been played by an actor I find especially alluring, but the character as written and as played just struck me as a pretentious, arrogant weirdo who may or may not have killed somebody, may or may not have a kinky dungeon. The film stars Adana Romney, who also co-adapted the screenplay and co-produced the film with her business partner. It took years for them to get the project off the ground, mainly because studios refused to agree to let her play the lead. Considering she only made brief appearances in 2 films before this one, I can understand their reluctance, and I'm not sure she was as perfect a fit as she believed. She wears the costumes well and has a certain je ne sais quoi, a mixture of innocence and worldliness in her expression, and her passion for the story is evident. But there's something lacking. There's an artificiality about her acting that started to distract me. I'm not saying it's a bad performance. The film itself is pretty over the top, and her performance is in line with that. Corridor of Mirrors was the first film directed by Terrence Young, who went on to become famous directing James Bond movies, and there are brief appearances from Thora Hird and a very young Christopher Lee making his film debut. And that's what else I saw in November. I hope you enjoyed this little collection. Go ahead and share what you think of any of the titles I mentioned or what you saw in November down in the comments below, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.